it will be the best attacking we have.
Hi, folks. We'll start in about 2 minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's 4 o'clock. We'll get started. Thank you all for being here today. We appreciate everyone's time and attention to being here. There are currently about 31 people with us in the Zoom and 51 people live via Facebook. But as always, this meeting will be recorded and available for playback in the future. So we will make use of the Q&A function as usual. So if you're a participant and you'd like to send us a question, please do that via the Q&A at the bottom, and we will get to all of the questions before we end today. I think that's all the introductory items. So believe it or not, this is our last task force meeting. We started about 8 weeks ago and have met every week except for one. And I just want to say thank you to the well over 100 people that have participated either through the task force directly or through a subcommittee. It's been an outstanding group of people. I am most proud of the fact that we have developed this plan in public and subject to public scrutiny and advice and opinion and insight along the way. I think that having done it this way has already provided significant returns from our community. People that have engaged have been able to engage to their level of comfort already and get their questions answered along the way, and much to the benefit of our community. So I want to thank all of you for being willing to do it in public and for all of your insight and input. As you know, having a draft of a major plan like this public and then having iterations happen can be a little scary because how the plan started is not how it's ending. But our school year is probably going to be that way too. How our school year starts is probably not going to be how it ends either. But we're doing it together and we're doing it in public, and I'm very, very proud of that. And I'm deeply indebted to this group. In particular, you folks have been willing to tell me when I'm wrong. You folks have been willing to tell me when I'm going down the wrong path and what the right path ought to be. And that's of tremendous value to me. So just my word of thanks as we get started. It is my hope today that we'll end this task force meeting with a vote and with the recommendation from this group to move the plan as it stands right now to our school board. So the process from now is this has been my planning work at the task force level. And now it transitions from a structural plan and moves over to our school board where it can then be adopted and begin becoming a nuts and bolts plan that can be implemented at the end of August. And so our school board will have the opportunity to review. Many of our board members have been participants in this process, which is very helpful. But it's our job now to do two things. One is to get board support for the things included in the plan, including the recommended policy changes that we'll need, including the appropriations that we'll need to fund the plan. And then our administration has to go from this conceptual level plan to something that can be put into practice. And so none of that would have been possible had it not been for this group. But that's where we go from here. Is August 10th will be an SAU board meeting. Stephen O'Keefe, as chair of the SAU board, has a plan for how he'd like that meeting to go. We're planning on having individual board meetings the week of August 17th. We've not scheduled those dates yet, but each of the three constituent school boards, Mount Vernon, Amherst, and Sauhegan, will need to meet primarily to discuss the financial impact of reopening with their individual boards and to adopt specific policies relative to that relate to their individual school district. So that's the plan from here. Is from you folks, the football gets passed to me and then to the SAU board on August 10th for ratification and approval. I wanted to go through some other introductory items. My plan is I've got some information to share. Then I'd like each subcommittee to take a minute or two to provide whatever final feedback you might have or give any update you might have from the past week since we last met, with the purpose of letting me know if there's any fatal flaws or any last questions you might have about the plan. A final discussion and then a vote. Fairly simple agenda for today, as we anticipated or as we hoped. So first, some changes from just last week. So our draft as it stands right now had a professional development calendar that included 6 PD days in the summer for our professional staff. And the dates that we had included were August 11th through the 13th and the 18th through the 20th. When I met with all of our faculty earlier this week, we had an all staff meeting, and it became pretty clear that those PD dates were problematic for many staff members for various reasons. Either they had childcare issues of their own, they're going to be out of town, or several other things that made those dates unworkable for a number of our staff. And so we put together 4 options and asked them to fill out a survey and give us their feedback on what they think our professional development opportunities ought to be. And we had them rank their 4 choices. So this is a little bit difficult to decipher, but they ranked their choices in order. We had 223 responses, which is very good. But you can see that everyone's last choice, the one thing that does stand out from this survey is everyone's last choice was what I'd thrown out there as a proposal. So as usual, I have the just know exactly what everybody thinks right from the start. So I got that one dead wrong. Pretty clear feedback there. The first choice for among the faculty was to have professional development the week of August 24th and delaying the start of school by 2 days for professional development purposes. And there was a plurality, I guess, of people making that their first choice, and then others behind it that we looked at, which were had some variations on that theme. So that's what my recommendation is going to be. So I want to walk through that carefully for folks. So August 24th is a Monday. And so Monday through Thursday of that week, there will be professional development for our staff. 2 of those days, the 25th and 26th, were already scheduled professional development days. That was going to be the Welcome Back Day and the In-Service Day to start the school year. And so the 24th to 27th will remain as professional development day, or that week will be professional development. Nothing will happen that Friday. The following week, the 31st and 1st of September, were supposed to be the 2 first days of school. Instead, those will also be repurposed to professional development. And the first day of school will be, in my proposal, the 2nd and then the 3rd of September. That would maintain Friday, September 4th as a no school day for a long weekend into Labor Day. And then Tuesday, September 8th will be a remote only day across the SAU, because that is primary election day in New Hampshire. And at Mount Vernon Village School and Sauhegan High School, we have no plans to mix voters with students. And so that would be a remote only day for that particular day. So to go over that again, I want to go over that and be clear for this task force purposes. Monday, the 24th through Thursday, the 27th would be professional development days. Monday, August 31st, Tuesday, September 1st would be professional development. School will now start the 2nd and 3rd. The advantages to that arrangement are that we reduce the number of days that taxpayers would be expected to pay. And my original proposal, we were going to have to raise funds to pay for 6 professional development days beyond what was budgeted. In this proposal, it's 2 at most. And 2 of our 3 districts, we actually have grant funds that will be able to cover some, if not all, of those professional development days. So if you looked at our list of resources for the money we need, I think it was half of the $1.2 million list of resources was for those 6 professional development days. And so this ameliorates almost all of that. So downside, it's 2 less school days for instructional time. That's a concern of mine. Our objective to have every student have a full year of academic progress during this school year. And I'm hesitant to give up any instructional time at all. However, the governor's reopening plan allows us up to 3 days that can be repurposed for professional development and not count against us from that side of things. And frankly, I also am attracted to the idea of fewer days with students in hot buildings with masks on. So that plays a part in my thinking as well. So that's one proposed change, and I'd be happy to take feedback on that. That's a lot of moving parts there, but I wanted to update you that after our survey and discussions, that's what I'm planning on including in the reopening plan. And I'll stop for feedback after I go through all of these proposed changes. Last week, our principals went through their proposed schedule for school days. And that's in the draft document right now. I want to say that those plans are still in process of being solidified. We are investigating the possibility of shortened school days at the elementary level to allow for common planning time for teachers, and also to reduce the amount of time that kids are wearing masks in a school building. We're working through that. Nothing finalized with that yet, but no, based on the feedback and the pivot to wearing masks for all students, that we're now looking at that. High school and middle school are still on track with the school day schedules they have in the draft plan that has been published. Our parent info nights. So we had committed a couple of weeks ago that we would have parent information nights for our parents to participate in learning more about the building specific plans. So I'm happy to announce the dates for those tonight. Of course, these will be published and made available to everybody, but I'm happy to announce them here for the first time. So on Tuesday, August 11th, there will be a Clark Wilkins Parent Information Night at 4 and a Sauhegan Parent Information Night at 6. Those will be Zoom only, those information nights. AMS the next night, AMS in Mount Vernon Village School the next night, Wednesday, August 12th, 4 o'clock for Mount Vernon Village School, 6 o'clock for AMS. So none of the parent information nights overlap with each other because we have parents and most of our parents have kids in multiple schools. Those will be Zoom only. They'll be recorded for parents who can't attend at those scheduled times. And we think that we'll have plenty of opportunities for questions even after the fact. We're doing Zoom only because of the limitations in our buildings for the number of people we can have. For example, Clark Wilkins in their multi-purpose room, I think, can host 45 people if we spread people out with 6 wide. And we just know there's going to be many more parents than that are interested in coming. And I think it's important to include everybody to hear the same information at the same time. So again, the 11th and 12th parent information nights for our community. Let's see. Next, we are aware of, and we've gotten feedback that what we've published so far does not have all of the information about the remote modality available for parents to review. So we realize we have to put more meat on the bones for that, and we're working on that. So with that, Dr. Bernasconi has a quick update. Bethany.
Sure, thanks, Adam. So all of the buildings are working right now on developing and really fleshing out what those remote learning plans look like. We recognize that this spring will look quite different than this fall does look. And we're investigating and spending time to build out professional development and really make sure we've got best practices in place. Key to this whole process and in providing flexibility to families is that we are looking to make sure that there is commonality between the online remote environment and also the on-campus environment. So teacher teams or teacher pods will be working together to make sure that they're tackling the same learning objectives and that we're working on same assessments and all of those pieces, so that whether your student is online or whether your student is an on-campus learner, the same learning objectives will be met, and that provides the flexibility from segment to segment. So we're working on all of those pieces right now. In terms of assessment, really best practice in assessment is having students produce products. You know, we've really moved as our SAU away from just recall type assessments. And so as we're having students make those products and demonstrate their learning, you'll see that happen both in remote learning and on-campus learning. So there's going to be a lot of commonality right there that builds that across. Teachers are going to work on best instructional practices. So we know we need to be mindful of screen time limits and things like that in our online environment. So we be working to blend synchronous and asynchronous learning to really help keep those students on track and moving forward. So we're working with our faculties to develop those plans and flesh those out a little bit more fully, and look forward to sharing those in the coming week.
Thanks, Bethany. Appreciate that. Moving along with just a couple of other items. First, some folks know that we've transitioned our student information system to PowerSchool. We're in the process of doing that this summer. There's never a great time to switch student information systems, but this probably isn't the ideal time, but we've done it. One of the benefits of that change is it will be much easier for parents to provide us with information and go through the registration process. And one of the systems we're setting up right now is the system that parents will use to notify us of their selection or their choice for each segment of the coming school year. And so that system is called eCollect, and it's going to take us a couple of weeks to get operational. But we are still planning on the week of August 10th, after our board meeting and after the parent information nights, to be soliciting that feedback from parents about what their choice is for their student for the first segment of the school year. So look for that and know we're developing that, and we hope to make it be pretty seamless with our PowerSchool system. Lots of question about athletics. We know that the NHIAA and the Tri-County League for middle school are providing information to us. We're not sure what we're going to do with athletics yet. I want to be very clear about that. I am a huge supporter of athletics. I think most folks who know me know that, but I have some reservations about how we can do it safely, especially given the amount of precautions and safeguards we're making to make our schools safe. And so I'm just not sure what we're going to do yet. I'm having meetings with surrounding superintendents in the next couple of days and weeks, and we hope to do something in concert with one another that where we work well together. But just know that that's something that I'm aware is still up in the air, and I'm just not willing to commit to any plans for that quite yet. We also have several other things that we're working on, as you can imagine. We're working on a mask policy for board review, and our policy subcommittee is having a special meeting on Monday to review that in advance of the August 10th SAU board meeting. We are considering what recommendation to make about a potential special meeting of any and all of our school districts regarding what we need. And in particular is our need for ventilation and HVAC upgrades. Know that our facilities director, Roger Preston, is working on both immediate things that we can do and more long-term things that we need to consider to improve ventilation and fresh air into our school buildings. We've already done things like increase the MERV rating of our air filters, which, if you're familiar with that, a higher MERV rating means more things get filtered out. HVAC systems, you can't just artificially place a super high MERV rating in an HVAC system, because higher MERV rating means it requires more energy to push air through it, and some systems just can't do that when you increase the MERV rating too high. But we're maximizing that, and other things. We're not going to be worried about energy efficiency. We're going to run systems longer and do the best we can, but just know that that's a major part of our next steps, is what we do with appropriations and the funding side of things. On the cleaning side of all of our custodians are going to be trained in cleaning and disinfecting protocols and actually receive an industry certification. That's going to be happening on August 5th. We are working through how we deploy our custodians and what additional custodial resources we'll need to make things happen. One thing I'm very excited about is we're investigating the use of UV cleaning robots that can clean our buildings at night and disinfect and actually take virus right out of the air. You saw in the news in the last couple of days, JetBlue and I think it was American Airlines are starting to pilot that in airplanes as well. So it's a bona fide technology that we're excited about. We are working on a data dashboard that we're planning to make public to our community once the school year starts, with disaggregated information about absences and attendance. One thing we've learned through this task force is that we may not be made aware of positive COVID-19 tests in our school community. We might if there's a big problem and there's a cluster, but there's no guarantee that we'll be made aware of COVID-19 tests. And so one thing we can do is let parents in the community know what our attendance rates are in school. So parents can monitor that over time. and be aware of that. So we're working on that. Let's see, what else? On the assessment side of things, we're developing an assessment plan to make sure we're monitoring student academic progress. And that might include adding additional testing during this year to make sure we're tracking kids closely and students aren't falling through the cracks. So be aware of that. And I think those are it for my updates. So as we move forward from this task force, just know that there are lots and lots and lots of details that need to be added to our plan. They will be, and we're going to keep publishing information as soon as we have those updates. So before I move into the subcommittee reports, are there any questions or feedback from all of that so far? I see Amy Facey first.
Thanks, Adam. So in the beginning of your report, you mentioned that the number of school days will be, instructional days rather, will be reduced by 2 days. And then also there was a mention of perhaps some shortened days for the elementary school, Clark Wilkins. Do you know where we are in terms of hours? As you know, we're on the hours-based calendar as opposed to the days. Do you still feel confident that we're meeting those requirements, even though I know that they have been reduced potentially? Just wondering where we are at.
Yeah, because the governor's plan included that waiver for 3 days, those 2 days of lost instructional time at the beginning of the school year don't count against us for that purpose. As I mentioned, it's still a concern of mine. Lost instructional time matters to me. And then the elementary folks, where we're considering shortened school days, would not shorten instructional time for them because, and we'll speak more about that in the future. I don't want to get too far ahead of our principals on that, but we're working on how we can have the school day still have the same amount of instructional time, but be shorter. I know that doesn't make much sense, but if you'll just give me some time to report back on that, I think you'll see what I mean. Shannon Gascoigne.
On the parent info sessions, you said that Clark Wilkins, that was on the 11th, and Sauhegan, and when is AMS in Mount Vernon?
On the 12th, the next day.
Okay, on the 12th. So I understand needing to have those via Zoom. I'm curious, and I've been asked this question by parents, students in transitional years, so when we're moving to new school, new kindergarten families, will there be any opportunity for any sort of orientation building with a caregiver? Or if you're a new student who's never been in our schools, you've moved over the summer or during the spring?
Yeah, thank you. And the principals are disappointed I forgot to mention that. So we talked about that today. Yes, the week of August 27th, we've not set times or dates for that, but we're planning on having school tours be available for students that are either matriculating from one school to the other or are new to our schools. So absolutely, our plan is to provide that level of access to those people if we can do it safely. Our principals are also putting together videos of what model classrooms might look like in their buildings. We already have the Clark Wilkins one. I have it. I literally haven't even looked at it yet, but we're doing that for each of our buildings to be ready for that.
All right, super. And then just feedback on the new start date. Just as a parent, I appreciate the district taking the extra time kind of to work through all the details. And so if those 2 extra days are needed and it makes sense, obviously as a taxpayer, the cost savings is nice as well. And I absolutely agree with the buildings are going to be tough. That, you know, the earlier we start, they're warmer. So
Any other questions? Excellent. Well, Shannon, you're up first. If you have an update from the parent community group and any fatal flaws, that kind of thing, you're up.
sure. Well, I had a whole list of things written out, and you touched on most of them. So the day in the life of a remote learner is really big on the minds of parents right now. Obviously, they want a lot of details before they can make any decisions, informed decisions. Everything from, you know, what does it look like when my, you know, first grader takes his mask off and drops it on the floor and doesn't have another one? How is that going to be handled? So questions like that. So I'm happy to hear that those are are in the works. Will the details on the remote learning platforms be available before parents are asked to make their decision on August 10th?
Yes.
I was also really happy to hear you mention the shortened school day, the potential of a shortened school day at Clark Wilkins. I've heard from a lot of elementary parents this week sort of saying, you know, if there's any way we can reduce capacity in the building, especially if we're not doing the specials in the way that we have in the past, that there are families who are open to that. I've also heard something similar from middle school families as well. That if that Eagle block is something that is flexible, there are families in the community who are have the capacity to do a different schedule there. That's really it. You answered so many of my questions. Generally, the framework is really well received within the community. It's just that the details that folks are still really looking for. Kindergarten. I received some questions about kindergarten students. Are we still off the table for a distance learning option for kindergartners? Because there's some confusion there in the community.
Yeah. So I think we're going to have to make available a remote option for kindergarten. I'm just going to be discouraging it as much as possible because I'm really concerned about the efficacy of it. It might be something that we still have to provide. And so I know Anna is still investigating how that might look and how the numbers look. So parents have options there. They can certainly enroll in kindergarten in person. They can enroll and if despite our advice, still choose the remote option. Third, they can hold their child off for a year and enroll in first grade the year after if they want, or hold them off a year and enroll in kindergarten based on their age. And we'll work with parents no matter what they choose.
Okay, great. Yeah, everything else I think you hit on: HVAC, air quality, cleaning, all of those things are swirling around out there. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anna Perro with the admin team.
Again, we had the opportunity to have staff meetings, teacher leadership meetings, and hear from the parents just giving us feedback. So again, what Bethany had said earlier, we are all working on Adam's Word document, having all details, be that the day in the life of a remote learner, and those details in that Word document by Tuesday. We do have a lot of meetings still with our remote teachers, with our specials teachers, to really be able to answer some of those questions from our para-educators. So we are just adding, as Adam would say, more meat to the bone in all of those documents and our schedule. So I would say stay tuned to that document, and all of that information and our plan will be updated. There, and hoping to even give maybe the video of what a classroom would look like with the spacing, so parents have an opportunity to see that.
Thanks, Anna. Stephen, you have an update from the Staff, Faculty, and Association Subcommittee.
I do. We had the opportunity to meet one final time this past Monday, and it was an awesome discussion. But before I get into some of the details that we talked about, I would be remiss if I didn't thank a couple of people for their participation this year, that folks that really stood out. Most importantly, my co-chair, Amy Facey, thank you very much for your support. You've done an awesome job this summer trying to dedicate your time and work with our partners on the faculty and the staff to really come up with their open and honest feedback to help craft this big draft. Two other people I want to highlight: Jolene Sawyer and Katie Kennedy, stepping up to help me out in our subcommittee meetings and in leading discussions and stepping out of your comfort zone to gather your coworkers' feedback. It meant a lot to me, so thank you very much for that. And then of course Sue Sprinkle for really stepping out and documenting all of our conversations, which at some points got got pretty intense and involved, and making sure that you captured everyone's thoughts and sentiment, and us forwarding a really articulate document up to Adam. As a community member, as a board member, and really as a parent, I'm in awe about the professionalism that everyone that Amy and I had the opportunity to work with over the past almost 8 weeks now, that you volunteered your time, you stepped out, you shared that feedback in a really transparent way, and allowed us to really see both sides of the equation, both from the parent side and also from staff and faculty side. So thank you very much for your time and effort. Moving on to some of that last final feedback that we received, we summarized it quite successfully in a document that I added to the Trello board this afternoon, and forwarded off to Adam actually on Tuesday. And some of those things were actually incorporated in the final draft plan. A good chunk of them are things that we would hope would actually go to the building level, and allowing building level administration to incorporate some of those ideas and concepts into the way our educational experience is delivered to our students. A couple of the topics, I'll just go ahead and quickly highlight them, trying to stay below the 3-minute time frame. Flex days district-wide, really clarifying and defining what those actually look like, and making sure that they're implemented across the entire district. A really important one that I've heard not only from the faculty and staff and our various entities that we work with, but also from parents. I'm going to piggyback on something that Shannon had mentioned a couple weeks back, was really clarity on how the safety status decisions are being made. We want to make sure that that stuff is fine-tuned and shared in a transparent way, so parents understand how those decisions are actually being made. And clarifying who's in those buildings during at least one of those phases. That's the phase orange, just coming up with a little bit more definition there. Professional development days and the equity across the entire district was an important topic. Timing, we've addressed some of that with your decision to move the start date back. I'm really happy about that decision. It just really allows all of our faculty and staff to enjoy the remaining parts of their summer as they prepare for, to be honest with you, a pretty stressful time as we transition into September, to really rethink how they've delivered their content in the past, and prepare for the new norm, at least for the next year. Remote instruction expectations, segmentations, the power of substitutes and their role, how is that going to look like? And something that, HVAC, of course, being a significant component, food service, bus drivers, and something that I want to make sure that I do bring to the forefront, and that's the mental health component of our faculty and staff. Reaching out to our health insurance provider, making sure that employees know what resources are available, either through the ECAP program, and accessing those services. Hopefully, we do a proactive outreach to all faculty and staff to say, these are the services that are available to you. Please utilize them. Things are going to be very stressful over the course of the next couple of months, both from a life safety standpoint, from going into work and rethinking about how to do your craft on a daily basis, but more importantly, their home life as well. So those things are going to be in flux. We want to make sure that we stay on top of that stuff, and make sure that we provide the level of support for our faculty and staff that we can. We're the best district in Southern New Hampshire, and I want to make sure that we operate on that on a daily basis. That's all I had. I'm really trying to rush real fast. I went a minute over. My apologies.
That was a great update, and it reminds me, Stephen. So it's a good time to point out that the Trello board that we've been using, or that's been available, which is available to the public as well, has all of our meeting information in it, including the videos from past meetings, a list of all the resources that have been collected and been relied upon in making this plan come together. It has all the decisions and tasks that we're working on as an administrative team, as well as the upcoming administrative meetings that are in process right now. And so anybody from this task force or from the public, you're free to peruse that. It's got a ton of information in it, and it's from all the information you guys have provided. So thanks for that. 2 of our subgroups get a pass for today. Our student subgroup, the leader of that happens to be in a dress rehearsal for the socially distant version of Legally Blonde, which I'm thrilled that all of our students can't be within 6 feet of one another. I think that's great for all sorts of things. So, but they're doing that in the parking lot of Sauhegan tomorrow night. It's not open to the public. I don't mean to advertise for it, but she's there at that. And Shilu, the head of our social emotional learning subcommittee, is really going to be starting their work as we move forward. And so I don't think, Shilu, you have anything that you need to report today, but tell me if you do.
I mean, I think it's just important to echo what Stephen had said about providing mental health support, not only for our students, but our faculty. That's going to be very, very important as we go along, getting people ready to come in and teach, and then keeping people afloat as things get stressful and change. I know at Sauhegan, we've worked to put together some recommendations, and we've got some really skilled folks all throughout the district. So I'm confident that we'll be able to do that.
Thanks, Shilu. And then finally, Jim Manning with our Science and Medical and School Nurses subgroup. Jim.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it high level because I think we have some important points we want to hit upon as we close out what's basically our last call here. The first thing I want to do, though, is I want to recognize everybody on this group. It really has been an amazing group, including Doctors Doug Allen and Jonathan Ettinger, who come to us from CMC. We've had a lot of input. J.M. Vore, who's with Foundation Medical Partners and Solution Health. A whole host of other providers on the list as well, including Deanna Kortz, who's been a real, I was going to say workhorse behind the scenes, but that's probably not the most flattering term, but she has done like an incredible amount of work. So Deanna, we're grateful to everything that you've done. Christine Disco, Heather Skelton, Melissa Schuft, Kim DeChambeau, Sue Saraf, and Denise Raymond. Everybody has made pretty much equal contributions during the entire process, and really have had kids, parents, and the community in mind as we've provided guidance to you, Adam, around the scientific recommendations we're going to need to consider as we head into the school year. So I want to thank the entire team. They've been amazing. We had our last meeting last night where we wanted to button things up. So there's some important points that we wanted to communicate as we finish out. The first thing is that we've all had the opportunity to review the plan that you have available out to the community. I sent the link out to the entire team. Everybody reviewed it before the meeting last night. And fortunately, I think that the good news is that after the review, there was really unanimous support from among the entire subcommittee on the plan, and we recommend that you move that to the SAU board for approval based on its current writing. So you have that recommendation from us. Some other things that we feel like the community needs to know, though. One is that in terms of the recommendations we made, we're really going to need to have good fidelity, execution, implementation of basic blocking and tackling with regard to some of the scientific recommendations. So our recommendations haven't changed, but in terms of the masks, in terms of really rigorous hand hygiene, in terms of the social distancing recommendations we've made, and the emphasis we've made on what we're calling nurse management, because they're going to be the major critical piece upon which a lot of the logistics when each of our school facilities operates. Those four pieces, if we have really good blocking and tackling there, we feel like we're going to have pretty good results. Having said that, and I know that Doug and JM have said this before, and I'm just going to work off some notes here. We want to make sure that the community knows there are some considerations. And the first is that if the expectation from the community is that there's going to be zero transition from COVID-19, even if we have excellent execution implementation of these recommendations, the subcommittee is essentially going to recommend remote learning because there's no way we can keep COVID-19 out of the building. It's not only true for our schools, but the COVID in our buildings is going to reflect what we see in our communities. I think we've said that before, but given the fact that it's our last call, we really wanted to hit home that point. It's really important for people to know in terms of making their decisions. In terms of masks, they are not the definitive measure for protection. They're an attempt to mitigate risk, but they are absolutely essential at every level. As data comes out from many different places, that becomes an emerging truth. So it is going to be absolutely essential. And then lastly, what gratifies us is that as long as parents are presented with the option of remote learning, 100% risk reduction from in-school exposure can be achieved from individual families. So if you are looking for zero transmission in terms of in-school exposure, there is an option that's available. So I think that we feel better because that option is there. We talked about that last night a little bit. We do have some open questions, and I think that it's going to be an ongoing conversation that our subcommittee, even though we said we met for the last time last night, we're going to continue to work with you, Adam, and the building leadership actively on, and the school nurses particularly, on addressing some of the questions with regard to community education, community education is going to be huge. We really need to think about what the specifics for that looks like, given the fact that this basic blocking and tackling we feel like is really going to get us to the place where we need to be to keep the community reasonably safe. We have some other open questions with regard to screening questionnaires, with regard to availability of personal protective equipment, or what people are calling PPE, particularly the KN95 masks that we need to have, and other protective equipment for school nurses so they can do their job, and other policy considerations we need to flesh out, like, you know, what is the specific and detailed procedure with regard to positive cases that may pop up within the school community. We don't have hard and fast answers to that, at least on our end at this time. We know we can get there if we work with you from now until the school's open, but those are some open questions that we need to tie up. Aside from that, we feel like we're in a good place. You have that unanimous recommendation where you can send to the SAU 39 board, and looking forward to the start of the school year.
Well, Jim, thank you so much. Your committee has provided a lot of validity, I think, to our process, and good information, and it has changed my mind on a couple of things. Thanks for that. And it's greatly appreciated. And I do hope that we'll still be able to continue to bounce things off of you and your committee, because there's a lot of things we don't know yet and we'll need to help flesh out. So 2 updates from what you just said. So I think I mentioned before a policy discussion. So we're working on all of that. Our school nurses got together and put together a parent questionnaire and a protocol to go with that. And so we're going to be working through the implementation of that. That ties back to our eCollect system I mentioned earlier. We're hoping to have that all tie together and be seamless for parents. And then there was a last thing that I've lost, but PPE. The state announced through the DOE that they're going to make available to school districts the ability to purchase PPE through the state contract and through preferred vendors, so that we should have early access to that, all of that. So we feel pretty good about that. And Michelle our business administrator, is already working with the state on that. So thanks for that. So, well, that's all. Those are all of our subcommittees. I'm curious if, as I open up to the floor, feedback, final comments, unanswered questions, major stumbling blocks, because as I mentioned, it is my hope, and I guess I'll say a prayer as well, that you folks will bless this plan as we move forward to the SAU board. And so is there any unresolved issues that any of you need before I look for that consensus style vote? Stephen.
Adam, if you can just take a moment, maybe have some of our principals maybe address, because there's an overwhelming sort of concern from just from community members about what a typical day is going to look like for one of our kids in September. What will that experience look like? Maybe if each one of the principals could just take 30 seconds and just describe that, I think that would go a long way.
Happy to do that, principals. You get 10 seconds heads up on that one. So let's start with Mike Berry, because you're already unmuted. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Adam and Steve, for that question. So a typical day, as we talked about last time, what we're hoping is that the student and the family, they choose the best option that is for them. And as 9th graders and 10th graders, their days are going to look a little bit different than 11th and 12th graders. So the example that I'll give you is, say a 10th grader. A 10th grader, in our eyes, is going to have the option to be remote or be in school. And if they want to come in school, they'll get transported, via bus or by another means of transportation. They'll come for 7:30, and they'll have a schedule that goes throughout the day, and they will be in their classes throughout their day. And if they have a free period as a 10th grader, they will have a spot where they will be assigned to be able to do their work. And that is kind of, as of right now, on July 30th, that is what the in-person kind of day looks like for the students. However, the protocols and the flow of the building, and this goes for 9th and 10th graders or 11th or 12th grader, when you're in the building, it is not going to be your typical Sauhegan open campus and I've never experienced that, but it's not going to be as open as it has been in the past. And people are going to, have assigned spaces where they're supposed to be. And when we move around the building, there's going to be a flow to the building that is yet to be determined. When we have free periods, we are going to use some of the bigger spaces and some of the other spots in the room, such as the school as the mini gym, to kind of give people some places where they can access and be socially distanced. We are going to have masks on, and we'll have mask breaks, predominantly outside. And so it's going to be structured, and it's going to be, you're going from place to place, and, group learning will look a little bit different, and the movement around the building will look a little bit different. A remote learner is going to be attached to a schedule, and there's going to be some expectations from the students and the families, and it's going to be a bit different than how it was in the spring, and more information to come on that. And 11th and 12th graders, we're going to have some tough conversations in the sense that we're putting a lot of faith in our 11th and 12th graders to adhere to the new routines and the new kind of opportunities of coming and going and accessing the campus as they need, as they're a bit more mobile than 9th and 10th graders. It's a little longer than 10 seconds. My apologies. So, but that's where we're at on July 30th.
Thanks, Mike. Kim Sarfty, who's driving a car right now. But Kim, can you go ahead and give an update while driving?
So I'm actually a passenger. I'm moving. My commute was an hour to Mount Vernon, and as of tomorrow morning at 8, it will only be 10 minutes. So that's why I'm driving. Yay, woohoo! So we're lucky enough to be able to have minimal disruptions to our school day. And so that's something that was really important for our teachers, and I think for the parents that I've spoke to as well. So for us, the day in school is going to look a lot like it typically has in terms of the daily schedule. We will have in-person specials. Students will be eating lunch in the classroom. However, they will be having recess outside. And again, as I mentioned in the last meeting, we have exterior classroom doors. So students will be spending an abundance of time outside and having very frequent mask breaks, which we as a faculty talked about the importance of for both the adults and for the students. When it comes to specials, our students will have the same special 3 days for the first 3 days of a week, and then the next 2 days they will have Monday through Wednesday they'll have the same special, and then they'll have another special on Thursday and Friday, and then the following week that will actually flip-flop to like another set of schedules that they'll have for 3 days and then for 2 days. When it comes to our remote learners, so initially we were thinking that we were going to have 2 teachers who would be tackling that, but we're exploring the possibility of having 3 teachers who will take on remote learning, and then we will break up the students into grade bands K2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that will hopefully give the teachers a little bit more time to offer some individualized support. The school day will look a little bit different remotely just because of the fact that we don't have a teacher for every single grade level. We do have teachers who will be tackling 2 or 3 grades at a time. So we'll look a little bit different, but we are certainly working together to make sure that we hit all of the focus standards for each of our content areas so that we don't miss anything. And then in terms of specials, we're going to offer remotely, technology, and then music, art, and PE will be they won't be offered live. We'll just have like a library of resources that parents can access, and then students can kind of tackle those specials on their own. That was definitely more than 10 seconds. And I didn't die even though my husband drives like a crazy man, so we're good.
Thank you, Kim. All right. Anna, would you go next?
So again, we will have a detailed plan for the drop-off of every student coming to Clark and Wilkins. But depending on the grade level, every student, depending on their grade level, will enter through a different doorway of the school in order to minimize cross exposure to other groups. So let's stick with the first grade group. They will come in the front door, head down their hallway into their pod. Depending on the numbers in their pod, there's 3 classroom teachers, and one of those classroom teachers is special ed or an interventionist. So they will go through their day in that pod. So they'll start in their homeroom with the number of teachers. They'll start their morning meeting in responsive classroom. And they will move through the content areas. So if it's literacy, there'll be their focus lesson, small group instruction. And then depending on the data for student needs and interventions, they can move within their pod to get what their skill is needed, whether that's interventions or extensions. There's time for independent practice and small group, and we will be able to do the same thing with math in all content areas. So all students on that one pod will be able to have all instruction and mitigated movement throughout the building. Lunch will be in the classroom. Recess will take place per the pod. And the beauty of it is the teachers will have the flexibility in their schedule to be able to have the recesses and lunch when it fits in best with their schedule. We meet with the specials teachers tomorrow to talk about, right now, all specials are remote. If there's different opportunities for that, but right now all specials are remote. And again, dismissal at the end of the day will take place, so there's no large group crossing. And again, remote, we just didn't want to put out a detailed plan. We are meeting and having planning sessions tomorrow with our with some teachers for remote learning. But again, it would be the same daily live Zoom sessions, chance for small group work, chance for individual check-ins with teachers. Again, they would have daily morning meeting. They would have access to the same specials remotely as we have now, and access to special ed and other services. But again, we'll have more detailed plans out to you.
Thank you, Anna. And finally, Bethany Bernasconi.
Thank you. So we've really divided AMS into an upper school model and a lower school model, but the schedule follows very similar across the board. So I'll go through the model and then tell you the differences really between the 5-6 and the 7-8. So our day begins with EAGLE, which is an opportunity for extension, enrichment, remediation, intervention. Really, it's meant to meet every student's needs of what they need to be successful as a learner during that time. So as students come in for that, they will go to a designated room. That room will be the same as their room for Launchpad, which is our implementation of our advisory model at the middle school. This year, that Launchpad group will be based on grade level, but we're committed to in the future moving forward to a multi-grade level advisory program. Students sitting in their EAGLE will remote into the places they need to be to get help from teachers. So that's minimizing movement through the building, with the exception being some of our special education services are really best delivered face-to-face. And so we're going to make sure we provide opportunities for those learners to receive the interventions they need to be successful. After EAGLE, students across the whole building engage in Launchpad, which is a great chance to really set the tone for our day and really build some community within our classroom. So whether you're a remote learner or an in-person learner, you'll engage in that Launchpad period as well. Then we move into the first block of instruction. So instruction is really broken into an AM block of instruction and a PM block of instruction. The AM block of instruction is 2 hours long, and in 5th and 6th, what will happen is that the instruction may be with their STEM teacher or maybe with their humanities teacher. So we have a modified block schedule, which every other day they'll switch to a different class. In 5th and 6th grade, you'll basically be with your STEM teacher or your humanities teacher for the day, and that really minimizes some movement across the building and gives the teachers opportunities to build in lots of time for math breaks and really be flexible with how they use that time to best meet student needs. In the middle portion of that day is an hour-and-a-half block of time, which we're calling our smart lunch. So 45 minutes of that time is designated for lunch and recess, and 45 minutes is designated for a directed study, which is going to be an opportunity to enhance skills and again, meet certain needs, perhaps using Dreambox Math and supplementing our math instruction, some other pieces there. But we have a teacher team who's going to be working to help us design exactly what the expectations and what that looks like. For 5th and 6th, then after that time period, go into your, well, you still continue with your PM core. And so now it's another 2-hour block of instruction with that same teacher that you've been with, or that same teacher team that you've been with that day. And again, that really just builds in that flexibility. In 7th and 8th, our teacher teams are across 7th and 8th. So we have an upper school English language arts team, an upper school science team, an upper school mathematics team, and an upper school social studies team. So those teachers will be working to offer essentially 2-hour blocks of learning for each of those courses. So students in 7th and 8th grade will meet with 2 different teachers over the course of their day. In their AM core, they may have science, and their PM core of 2 hours may then be social studies. And again, that's meant to kind of limit some mixing through the day and limit our movement across the day as well. In terms of online learners, again, we're still fleshing out a lot of the details about this because we want to be really thoughtful and make sure that our faculty has time to give some input and some feedback into our design. So we held focus groups earlier this spring to help design this, and are working to flesh out what that model is. One of the pieces that was key for our faculty and for our parents last year was to simplify things. So we've simplified our schedule so that there's a schedule that online learners will follow that mirrors the same schedule as our in-school schedule. And that really allows for collaboration of teacher teams, both on campus and remote learners, to make sure that we've got that consistency in instruction and assessment are really meeting students' needs and allowing for the flexibility from segment to segment. That doesn't mean that an online learner will be stuck to their screen for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours straight, right? So we're really cognizant that we need those breaks in there as well. So what that might look like is during that 2-hour block of instruction for their AM core, perhaps the teacher will have everyone come together right at 9 o'clock. Everyone meets together, and there's some presentation of the key material and concepts for the day, a warm-up, some discussion, some class engagement there. Then students might go off for the next hour and do an assignment that the teacher has assigned to them. So it might be something completely off screens. It might be something on screens. It might be something collaborating with another group of students that they're working with. And then perhaps at the end of that time period, students will come back together with the teacher to kind of re-engage, wrap up the conversation. So we're really going to build in best practices for instruction so that we can make sure that we keep kids engaged, right? We know that kids need transition times and that it can't just be all the same and it can't be just engaging in one way through the screen. So we need to design and build in opportunities for collaboration, opportunities for direct instruction, opportunities for students to go and process material deeply and have the time they need to do that, as well as be off screens during that time as well. That smart lunch in the middle of the day is really going to offer our online learners some opportunities. Perhaps they want to go eat lunch with their family, or they're going for a walk outside. So there's an 1.5-hour chunk in the middle of the day. That's that directed study and that lunch and recess where they'll have some flex time for themselves so that they can, and their families can determine what they need at that moment. If there's something that's being assigned to take care of in that directed study, perhaps that family decides or that student decides that right now I need a break and be off screens, and that's something I'm going to do later this evening after dinner. So trying to provide a schedule that supports students, but also some flexibility in there as well.
Thank you, Bethany. So if you could all let me know which principal did the best job, I'd appreciate that. So thank you, all of our principals. I have to say, our principals are absolutely outstanding. This is, you can see how complicated all of this is. There's no easy lift in this process. Redesigning an entire building's master schedule, figuring out everything from lunch to specials to athletics to advisor. I mean, it's an unbelievable amount of moving parts, and these 4 principals have been working day and night to do that. So just so thankful for that. Great question, Stephen. Probably a longer answer than you anticipated, but I hope that was pretty helpful because that was really good. Other questions? I see Shannon Gascoigne. Shannon, you're up.
Yeah, thank you to all of the administrators. That's really helpful. I had a question for Anna. How large is a pod? This was a question that came through this week about how many students are in a pod.
So we're, again, based on numbers, projecting anywhere from 30 to 45.
Okay. So then the parent would expect that their student could potentially come into contact with the 30 other kids as they're moving through their pod, but it would be the same pod.
It'd be the same,
Well,
correct.
hoping.
So, yep, it would be the same students all the time. And again, when they're in the building, they would have mask on. What we're doing is also, again, when you can see the video, even like if you go to the grocery store, like the arrow, how you enter the room and kind of make your way around, even at like the teacher reading table. I know Victoria Boothroyd set up hers today. Like there was 2 blocks of where the kids would sit. So I think it's within that 900 square foot classroom, having 10 to 15 students. But I think moving throughout those 3 classrooms, I think we're still doing a nice job with limiting the number of students that the students are with, but at the same time offering probably the best instructional and interventions possible for that small group. So we're seeing it also as an incredible opportunity for instructional making up for lost time and extending. So yes, 30 to 45 students, but also just having that kind of intense service and direct instruction. We're thinking it's a great model for us.
Thank you. A couple just other quick questions. The drop-offs, if you have multiple grades of children, have you thought about that? So I don't need an answer, but that was a question that you mentioned, the parking, the dropping off situation. So put that out there.
Yeah, that's like the 2 a.m. Thought.
Great.
But yes, we have thought about it. I'll just make sure when we're on the video, just explaining it as best possible.
And I know you said you're still working out the remote details, which is great. There are a lot of questions there. Can you provide any information on what parents can expect for the student-teacher ratios there, or is that still in flux?
I would still say in flux. Some conversations that like we need to have administratively. I know that we've personally had conversations like how many is too many, and then we've also asked for additional teachers in our remote if the numbers are what we're projecting. So we would have anywhere from about 20 to 25 max, but we're not looking for over 20. I think Bethany, sorry to call you out, but I think in one of our meetings today, you were saying also if everything was perfect, 19 was probably the number that you were looking for remote. So probably on that slide that we presented last week. Okay, shake it off, Bethany. The slide that we presented last week, the numbers looked like they were probably higher. That's when we said to Adam that we're going to need to take a look at if our remote numbers are at 30%, then we do need more than 1 remote teacher per grade level. So we're already on that. So we're just waiting until the August 12th date to really know what we're looking at for numbers. That was long-winded. Did it make sense, Shannon?
No, it didn't. And I, to Adam's point, I recognize there are so many moving parts, and I'm just trying to ask the questions that I'm
sure,
hearing.
Out loud, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in terms of a framework, I think that this plan achieves, it's ambitious but it achieves what the community has said they need, which is flexibility. The ability to alter what we're doing if the situation gets worse, or if there's other considerations within the household. So as far as a framework goes, full support. That being said, there are a lot of unanswered questions still. I'm sure for teachers, but certainly for parents in the community. So I really want to put that out there that there's still so many details that parents are hoping to get as soon as you guys have them nailed down. And the slideshow I presented last week and all of the notes that we have taken in our parent and community subgroup meetings, many of those questions still exist.
So I think for us too, I think our deadline was try to update the document by Tuesday morning. So people will be able to go on and see kind of what a day in the life and what that structure looks like and the expectations.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
If I echo Anna, it really does. it really is a numbers game with figuring out our what family preference is, and then making sure that it's the best case scenario for both the health and safety of our in-person learners, and also supporting our online learners as well. So as those numbers become more solidified, I think that, you know, all of the buildings really are feeling more and more confident at being able to give some definitives with that.
All right, any other questions from the group? None at all? Well, I can share with you, and I'll embarrass somebody right now, as I'm good at doing. So one of our biggest fans has been my mom. So here she is sitting watching. So former school teacher for, she taught for what, 65, 70 years?
33.
33 years. And she's watched all of our meetings and is happy to be in the room during these meetings. And she's giving me comments and questions in my ear here. So thanks, Mom. Dr. LaBranch, were you waving at me? Man.
A question related to the discussions that have been going on between Shannon and Bethany and Anna as well. And the hard date with respect to parents making a decision on whether they're going to opt for remote or in person, I assume is coming sometime after the school board meetings, when the school board approaches that. The related question is, how nimble are we with respect to being able to adjust to the data as we move forward? I have a concern that as we move closer to the start of school, that there may be a change of mind, a change of heart, if you will, as various people start to think about the risk and what kind of risk they're willing to take and not take. And so obviously that has implications also for your human resources in terms of the deployment of your instructional staff. So, you know, the sooner we can get a handle on that data, obviously, many of the questions that Shannon and parents had with respect to what's it going to look like will be answered.
Yeah, that's the biggest cause of consternation with our principals right now, is not knowing the actual numbers that they have to work with to solve the multivariable calculus problem. So I can't in good conscience ask parents to make a definitive choice before our school boards even had an official chance to review the plan, but soon after is, meaning days after, is when we plan to ask parents. And we also thought that the parent forums those 2 days after the school board meeting will be helpful in parents making an informed decision. But I also share the same concern, Dr. LaBranch, that as we approach now September 2nd and the first day of school, that people's level of comfort will shift based on the news media, what's happening in the community, and just their own as it gets more real for them. So unfortunately, there's not much more I can do to pin it down right now, but I've been relying on the data from surveys so far, both from faculty and parents, about what they've been saying they're planning on doing, and hoping we're within a small margin of error of those numbers. Go ahead.
My only comment was more cautionary with respect to what the challenge will be moving forward. And I think you and the committee have created a plan that is nimble, as I've used that word, and has the flexibility to be able to adjust accordingly. But I think everyone has to be cognizant of that fact moving forward, and that the new normal is going to have all sorts of tangential impacts from day to day.
Yeah, 100% agree. Thank you for that. Anybody else from the committee? Jolene, go ahead. Jolene and then Peter.
Thanks, Adam. I had a question around the remote option 5 days a week, because I remember when we first went remote in March, I believe there was a document that came out from the superintendents and the principals and I'm not sure, I think it was teachers unions, where they recommended that remote learning take place 4 days a week and not 5, because of just so much screen time. I was wondering if that was in any of the considerations for some of the, I know Sauhegan is going to do well, we called it a flex day during the last school year. But I didn't see that in some of the schedules for any of the other districts. And I was wondering what the thought process was about having it go to 5 when the recommendation was for 4 from their stakeholders.
Yeah, that's a fair question. What I can say is that from my perspective, the remote learning has got to be as close to a reasonable facsimile of the in-person environment as possible. It certainly wasn't very rigorous last spring, or at least as rigorous as we wanted it to be. It's not a criticism. That was intentional on our part. We all had we shifted on the fly and focused on the connection and the emotional and social aspects of what we were all going through last spring. But moving forward, it's got to be much more rigorous. And so I think we've built in appropriate breaks into the school schedule in an age-specific way. You've heard the elementaries talk about their plans for shortening the day in a way, the middle school for its plan, and then Sauhegan with its flexibility built in. But Mike, is there anything you want to add to that question?
Yeah, I'll try to answer a couple of the questions that have been in there. Well, I answer that one as well. But what we're hoping to do on that Wednesday is we're going to have people on campus. We're going to have staff members on campus, and we're going to have groups of students on campus, and that is going to be determined as needed as the year goes on. And that detail has not yet been decided on, but because of the situation that we're in at the high school, because of how we want to run it, as many courses as we absolutely want to run, and then utilize the building in the most flexible manner that we can, having that day as a day where kids will be working from afar or they'll be working on campus in small groups. We think that day is going to be really valuable to us at the high school, and to, if we're going to try to work towards having students have the ability to get a year's worth of growth, that day will be definitely utilized. We just haven't really had the time to work through those details because we're kind of still in this phase. And as we get through August, the leadership team and with the staff members will work on that day. I'm not sure if that answers the question, Jolene, from where you're coming from, but I'm telling you from where the high school is coming from.
I know. Sorry to interrupt, Mike. I know that anecdotally from all the people that I talked to in my squad, that day was crucial for connecting with kids who were struggling, supporting kids who, remote learning there may be kids who choose remote learning, but who actually struggle with it anyway because their fear of the virus is significant, or that's the choice their family makes. So I just worry that in other schools, if there's a day built in to maybe catch up. I see what you're saying, Adam, that there's some time built in. I just am a strong advocate of that day. I feel like it was so crucial to be able to really support those kids. Those were the days, I think most people agree that we worked the hardest on those days, which you think Flex Day, maybe that's not the case, but it really was so much one-on-one instruction, and our days were full from morning until the afternoon and sometimes late into the afternoon, trying to support kids who were really struggling. And so I just wanted to make a plug for that. I worry about the fact that there's not equity among the buildings that way. And I also wonder, just in terms of that deep clean that people talk about as being so necessary. So I just wanted to share that. I felt like that was just kind of weighing on me. So I just wanted to share that.
Appreciate it, Jolene. Peter King.
Hi, thanks. So Dr. LaBranch brought up, I think, a good point about the plan has to be nimble, and I think it is nimble. But my question is really, how nimble is it going to have to be? And I say that let's just say 50% of the kids want to do online, 50% of the parents want their kids in school, and that's how we start the school year. One media blast could shift that to a 90-10%. Either way, we may have no cases in New Hampshire. All of a sudden, everyone goes back. But I don't think we're gonna green light the school. We're not gonna red light it on the other. So, is there a point? And here's my question: is there a point where we have to say we can't offer the two programs anymore? If it becomes 90-10%, are we still going to offer an online course?
Yeah, one thing that's a great question. One thing that's I've not really made explicit so far, and Heidi, your kitty cat back there, is red would be, oh, there's both of them. My eyes are watering from my cat allergies just looking at them. But oh my gosh, Peter, it's a mess over there. So red reflects that partially as well. So if we end up with 90% of parents saying my kid's not coming to school, well, we're just going to shift to the red status if we haven't already, because something has happened in the community that's made it untenable for in-person schooling. On the flip side, I see blue as the opposite, where we're at that point expecting 99% of our kids to be in person or to be comfortable being in person, in which case we've largely shuttered our remote options, and we've done what we do in a typical year when there's a child or two in each school that have to stay home for whatever reason. We provide additional services to them on an ad hoc basis, as opposed to a systemic basis across the school. So I do see those two extremes of red and blue being in response to those conditions flipping that far in each direction. Any other questions from the group? Yeah, Dr. Allen.
So to follow up on that, I'm wondering if you've thought through what will happen if, say, taking that example as an extreme, if 90% of the students want to come to school in spite of there being a legitimate threat of spread in the community, the numbers aren't at zero, and it significantly compromises any attempt at spatially distancing.
I froze or you froze for about 10 seconds there. I'm sorry. Could you just repeat that for me?
Sure.
So sorry.
I'll throw it at you again. If you have a disproportionately high level of students and families that want to be in school, but there isn't, a point where the virus is low enough that you could disregard the need to mitigate, how are you prepared to navigate your inability to offer any spatial distancing with full classroom participation?
Yeah, if the data becomes so out of whack, if there's such a dissonance between what the local data is telling us from a safety perspective and parental preference, then we're going to have to limit artificially the amount of students in the school. Right now, a great limiting factor already in place is our faculty response. And so far, our faculty have been sensitive in the sense of being less willing to come in the in-person campus as it relates to data in the community. So if we have less faculty availability, that also will limit our student availability on campus as well. So we will just simply have to provide, it won't be parent choice any longer. It's gonna have to be by artificial means that we limit the student population on campus. From the science and medical side, is that the right approach? I mean, I assume that you guys would agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the concept that you're picking a level of spatially distancing that you're going to start with, and you might find that you need more than even 70%. In theory, you could find yourself only being able to accommodate half the students in the building, which would force you to navigate whether you do an A/B schedule or force remote learning on a certain percentage.
Yeah, my sense is that if conditions deteriorate to the point where we have to absolutely at all times maintain 6+ feet of social distancing in addition to masks, then even AB is not going to be enough for our schools. Our classrooms are in many cases too small for that, and that's why status orange has 25% of the school population being able to be present, because that's that's actually what we can fit in our buildings if everyone has to maintain fully 6 feet apart at all times. So we would have.
Yeah, I
80
would agree, Adam. It's going to have to be an iterative process, dynamic as we get more information going forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Edinger. Anybody else?
There's a couple questions that I probably could jump in on.
Sure.
Heidi, regarding the Facebook one, will community service be handled? How will they? We're going to take a look at where we're at, and that is not yet to be determined, but having kids do community service hours, as part of a school thing, I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but I think we'll react appropriately where we're at, and logic will prevail in that situation. And there was one from Laura Taylor. I think it might have got answered about 9th and 10th graders moving off and on campus. We're going to be, the words being flexible, like nimble and flexible, and being able to create the best situation that works for families and the students and the school. We're gonna keep that in mind, and if that means allowing 9th graders if they have a free period to actually go back to the house and then come back, that's something that we're going to consider as we get closer. But I want to caution and kind of want to stress that it is July 30th, and there's a lot of details that to work out, and we're going to try to get as much information prepared for Tuesday, and then after the board meeting, get as much information prepared for the parent information meeting, so people can make the best decisions that they can at that time. And it's really hard to predict what the situations are going to be, and so I can tell you, you're asking really good questions that are, that are relevant to, like, especially high school kids, where it's getting towards the end of it, and you want to make sure that you have all the courses, you have all the opportunities, you want to have all the experiences. And I can assure you that we're just going to try our best to make sure that it is as sensible and logical for people, and age appropriate, and it works for families. And we're going to end up ultimately handling case by case, Adam. And so that's kind of where we're at with it. But these are good questions, and they're things that are on our mind. We just don't have answers as of today. And it's a tough thing to say, I don't know, in your first month of work in the new SAU, but I don't know.
Welcome to 39, Mike.
But I think that the reason why Mike came to 39 is because we know how incredibly capable the teachers are. I mean, the teachers in 39 and everywhere else in New Hampshire, they were able to just completely transition how they approach their profession, and they did it so well. So no matter what happens, I think we're going to be okay.
Amy.
So Mike, along the lines of what you're talking about, really involving personalized education in terms of a plan for each student, not just what they're learning, but what courses they're going to be taking and how their schedule is going to work. Do you plan on having that, the administration of that, flow through guidance or advisory or both, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think I need to clarify your question a little bit more.
So, as you said, you're going to be taking each student case by case, trying to figure out, how to work with them with their individual schedule, whether they have a class that, whether they're like a 9th and 10th grader who is in school, but then maybe perhaps takes a course online and needs to go to a different room. It sounds like there's a lot of moving pieces for each student, and which I totally agree with and appreciate. I'm just wondering how, from an administrative standpoint, you plan to pull that off and who are your people that you're going to be relying on to make that happen?
Yeah, no, good question. I think a lot of the communication is going to be on kind of two fronts. We are going to utilize the school counseling office and Karen Chininis and the other school counselors to work directly as we build the schedule, and for each student, and as they get their schedule. And then when you get a high school schedule, sometimes like you don't like some of your classes, and instead of going down to your school counselor office and say, hey, period 2 doesn't work, what else is available period 2? Those aren't going to be necessarily the conversation. The conversation should be like, hey, period 2, I have this class, you know, can I take it remotely? And I think the conversation changes about the needs of the students. And you're going to have different circumstances where you might have a 9th grader who has the ability to, you know, come in for certain classes that they feel they want to have access to, and then work from the house where they don't. And we're going to be flexible on that piece of it. And then you might have a 9th grader who needs to come to school, and when they have classes that they might be doing primarily like via Google Classroom and online, we have a room for them where they'll be supervised and they can go in there, and that will be done through the counseling office. But and then we have advisory and in our work with advisory and anchoring adult. So as we manage the situations that arise for these students throughout the year, and they change modalities from segment to segment, and they change their plans just like teenagers and families do, we have the resources and people between those two places to kind of make some of these changes as we need. I hope that answers your questions or answers your question on that one, but I think that's what you're asking.
Yep, we'll get there.
Okay.
Anybody else? Oh, Shannon, you got your hand up. Go ahead, Shannon.
Thanks. So Adam, what I'm hearing you say you're looking for from us today in our final meeting is really a vote on the framework that's in place, with the acknowledgement that there are still a lot of moving parts and details to figure out. Is that what we're being asked today?
Yes.
Okay. I feel good that I can do that. So
Okay, thanks.
forth.
Hey, Jensen.
So I'd like to call the question. Let's vote on this.
The moderator of Amherst has called the question. So I don't need a formal vote. I mean, if you guys want a thumbs up or something, that's effective for me. This isn't a school board committee and there's no minutes being taken. So I guess I just look for, if you're on board that this is the right framework and you're ready for this to go to the SAU board, give me the old thumbs up if you can. All right, it appears unanimous. Well, that's awesome. Mom's got her thumbs up too, by the way. So thank you all for that. I am going to continue to rely on you folks by asking some of you to be there on August 10th at our board meeting. I don't have all the expertise you folks have or the information you folks have, and we'll be relying on some of you to help present to our board on August 10th. And then beyond that, I'm going to be in contact with a lot of you about gathering feedback, and may even consider calling this task force back together as needed, because the only thing I know for sure is we're not going to get everything right as we start this school year, and we're going to need to iterate and refine our plans. So, but this is it for our regularly scheduled meetings, and sincerely indebted to all of you for this. We have people from all over New England reading our plans and providing feedback. Our plan's been downloaded several thousand times. And in fact, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which accredits all high schools and colleges in New England and boarding schools around the world, invited us to present our plan to all of their members. Over 500 people watched live as we presented our plan to provide feedback to people all over the world. So this has been a great, fantastic process, and I'm very proud. So with that, thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Take care.